Hello guys, today I thought I would do a video that's a little bit different from what I'm expected to do with the channel, and to speak about topic that I've noticed many international media channels and blogs do not really cover too well. This is Catalonian independence. However, to understand Catalonian independence you need to know the history and the current state. So I'm gonna try summarize it really quick. If you had to summarize the history of Catalonia and the Catalan identity, you have the main different stages. You have the medieval golden age, you have the three centuries of decadence, early, early 20th century and 19th century where Catalan culture was revived, the dictatorships of the 20th century, and the downfall of Catalonian in the modern world, and the current state of affairs, which we'll go into later on. After the fall of Rome, different regions in Europe were conquered by Germanic peoples, as you might know, and Spain had a little bit had a major difference, which was that it was conquered by the Moors, which were spreading Islam. That basically meant that the peninsula was conquered by a foreign religion, and well, you could say Christianity is foreign anywhere, but at that stage, Islam was a new religion, and basically it had spread throughout most of the peninsula. And the few regions in the north that had not been conquered, as well as a few regions that were added by Charlemagne when he came to help the different regions within what is today Spain and Portugal fight against the Moors. Um, these regions would become their own kingdoms and eventually do what we know as the Reconquista, which is reconquering the land and making it Christian again. Eventually, that succeeded with two main different kingdoms that emerged from that. You had the Kingdom of Asturias initially, which would become Castile. Castile had more land within the peninsula, and then you have the Crown of Aragon, which was born from those regions that Charlemagne had made in the start, and had spread throughout the east of Spain and a few different regions throughout the Mediterranean. However, the death of the monarch of the Crown of Aragon um, made made it so that a Castilian family member went into power due to blood relationships and such, and that meant that basically both the Castilian crown and the Crown of Aragon crown were led by the same family. Eventually, these two would be united by marriage, which would be the Catholic kings, and as you might expect, Castile got more was the focus of the monarchy because it was the origin of both members. Then later the discovery of the Americas and the fortunes and misfortunes that it brought, including slavery, gold, silver, fights against other regions, became the prominent focus of Spain at the time. The Spanish Empire was the focus of the government, not so much local affairs. So that reinforced again that Castile was the center of the government, and it remained so until, well, it has remained so. And that basically meant that the focus in pretty much every aspect of society moved to Castile rather than the Crown of Aragon on maintaining a balance between them two. And this would be the start of the decadence, which would last from the Renaissance to the end of the Enlightenment. Throughout these 3 centuries, you have a few different things that also oppress Catalonia a little bit more. First, lost lands to the neighbours. It will be punished severely by the different crown unions that were attempted. For instance, when it was united with the Holy Roman Empire, different regions in Spain were against uniting the crown with them. So basically, they fought against this, and they were punished as just for showing resistance to having a Germanic crown, Germanic monarch. And then later on, the French kingdom and the Spanish kingdom were for a really short amount of time planned to be united. However, the different regions in Spain were against it, and while France and Spain remained different entities, that meant that any regions that were against this were punished, including Catalonia. And also throughout different wars, it lost different regions, including Catalunya del Nord, which is currently in France rather than in Spain. So you can see that Catalonia was not a center of focus. It was punished and it was oppressed, and basically Catalonian identity was in threat. Then in the 19th century, Romanticism, a movement that was spread mostly throughout Europe and America, especially North America, spread, and basically what it tried to do is revive local cultures, among other things. And one of the local movements was the Renaixença within Catalonia, which basically tried to look back at those medieval ages where Catalonia had been really important in pretty much every aspect of society, and that it was a rich land rather than a punished land. And they managed to bring Catalan culture again into prominence, and it worked pretty much throughout the Catalan version of Art Nouveau, Modernisme, which you may know due to the works of Antonio Gaudí, the architect, and later on with Noucentisme, which was it's a little bit more difficult to explain, but basically Catalonian culture had moved just from being a revival to being Catalan and at the same time modern. So the Catalan culture and identity were revived at this stage. However, there were different government problems. For instance, there was a failed attempt at Spain forming its first republic, which would lead the country to a dictatorship, which again oppressed Catalonian identity and different identities throughout Spain that were not Spanish. And then you had the Second Republic, which was rather good in terms of this. It considered the different local identities. However, once the right political parties got in, they would not allow this, and different people from society, including industrial workers, were oppressed economically even more. So there was basically revolts, and this would lead Spain into a civil war, with the two sides being totalitarian, a right side, and the democratic left side. And this would sadly end with the totalitarian side winning, due to the help of the Axis powers, including Germany and Italy. It's quite funny how Spain did not actually get involved in World War II, but World War II powers did get involved into the Spanish Civil War. It's interesting to see, and Hitler was really angry about this if you research a little bit about it. So after the Civil War had been won by the totalitarian regime, obviously it got into a dictatorship again, and this time it was worse than the first one. And Franco would be the dictator in this case. And any regions that had fought against the rising of Franco were severely punished. And Catalonia is probably the most prominent example of this, basically showing anything that you were Catalan, including simply speaking the language or using the local customs and such, was outlawed. You could not be Catalan. If you were caught being Catalan, you were a criminal. You would be punished or even killed. And so there were three main answers to this. There were people that went into exile to different countries. There were people that renounced their Catalan identity, and there were those that kept it under a veil of secrecy. And due to these people, Catalonian identity and the Catalan language has been preserved. Otherwise, it would have probably disappeared. After the death of Franco in 1975, basically Spain went into a time of transition into a democracy, and this is when a few different things would be ignited. For instance, there were terrorist movements that emerged at this time, including ETA. There were different coup d'états, trying to bring back again another dictatorship. And though in the end, democracy won, and currently Spain and currently Spain is um, the inheritor of those times. So Spain is currently a democracy thanks to the help of those in the transition, especially Adolfo Suarez. And in this democracy, we actually get to the present moment right now. In the current state of affairs, Catalonia is one of what we know as comunidades autónomas, which are different regions throughout Spain, which are in many aspects self-governing, but then it lends to the nation. And here's where things get tricky, because basically they're expected to support each other, which more or less makes sense, especially if there's any kind of climatic problems. But this means that if there's any regions that are way wealthier by working, um, they still need to give money to regions that do not work too much. I'm not gonna say any specific, but I'm gonna say that Catalonia gives way more than what it gets back from the state, and it's not only because there's some climatic problems in the south of Spain, because there is, but also because basically people like to take money away from different people and not work. So I'm not going to point out any names. I'm not going to get into that kind of problem, but it is a thing. And basically, having all of the reasons I've explained, having all the oppression throughout these years, being recognised as a local identity, a local culture, and such, really it is to be expected that there will be some independence movement. And here is where things really get interesting, because on the one side, some people think that Catalonia would not be able to survive with Spain, and vice versa, that Spain would not be able to survive with Catalonia. Then there's some people that consider the independence more important, whether they remain as part of Spain, and some people say that they're not Catalan, they're just Spanish. Then there's people that are completely against being considered Spanish, and they just want to be Catalan. And there's many different positions here. It's not two different sides to it. No, there's plenty of different people, and not all Catalonian people want independence, and not all Spanish people are against Catalonian people becoming independent. There's many different positions to the current state, and at this stage, it does not look like Catalonia is going to become independent, at least not in the near future. However, there is more independence parties and interest than what there used to be a few years ago, so there has been a growth. I'm not entirely sure how this is going to end, but this is something that I cannot really tell you. I personally think, to be honest, it's up to the Catalan people to decide, and not for the Spanish to decide. For instance, the United States of America became a country because they had no voice in the British Empire. So the only way they had to basically be empowered again would be to become independent. Same goes for Ireland. Same goes for pretty much any colony in the world. So I think it's something Catalonian people need to decide, rather than Spanish people meddling with this. However, at the same time, I do not want, in any case, that in case Catalonia does become independent, or it does not, for Spaniards and Catalonian people to be one against the other, because we don't want any more problems within Europe. I mean, I think we've moved on from that stage. At least I hope we've moved from that stage, where basically just trying to show your own identity is something people will not allow. I think regardless of what happens, I think it's up to Catalonian people to decide, and not anyone else in the world. Not the ONU, not the European Union, not Spain, anyone. It's them. If they want to become independent, I say just do it. If they don't want to become independent, up to them. This is not going to be a constant. I mean, um, as I say, the opinions have changed, and there's different movements that have risen into prominence that are against or with it. So basically, my point is, I'm not Catalan. I just happen to speak Catalan because I was risen in a region where they speak Catalan. However, my point is, well, and then you have my British identity, which kind of mellows a little bit with the Scottish independence thing. I'll probably get to that in a later video, but that's more complicated in my opinion than Catalonian independence. Catalonia has been oppressed in many different ways, whether it's for reasonable reasons. Sorry, sorry for being so. Whether it's for reasonable causes or not, that's object to debate. But in my opinion, Catalonia has been oppressed, and if they want to become an independent country, up to them, up to them, up to no one else. And the thing is, here we get into the really difficult part, which is basically how the two countries are going to react and what's going to happen economically. Because some people think that Catalonia would be better off without Spain because they wouldn't need to pay to the different regions in the peninsula, which, fair enough, it makes sense. It has its own industry, it has tourism, it has education and a great health service, so they're pretty much really well off. However, at the same time, many of the things they do is interior trade, so it does kind of there is different levels to it. It's not a really easy thing to do. And then you have whether what's more important, being independent or being well off, and that really gets to many different people. And it's a really complicated matter. I would like to see your opinions in the comments if you have any opinion about it, if you have any questions, if you have any different views from mine. I would invite you to put it in the comments. I just will ask you to basically be respectful about it because I just want people to respect one another, whatever their choices are, which is pretty much the fundamental of democracy. If we choose something, we choose something. You need to respect it. And I know, well, depending on what issue, you would not allow it in the first place. But that's getting a little bit too metaphorical here. My summary is basically, Catalonia has been oppressed. Currently, there's different people that want to become independent, and my opinion about the subject is, if Catalonian people are willing to become independent, it's up to them to decide, and no one else should have a say within it, regardless of the economy or regardless of the economy. I do think that Catalonia needs to sort a few things out before it actually becomes independent, if it does. Like, for instance, the current main leader, Artur Mas, I personally think he's there just so that people in history books say that he was the first independent Catalonian leader, which I do not think he's doing it for the goodness of Catalonia. I think they need to get another leader, another system. But that's just a personal opinion. I do think that Catalonia can do it, can pull it off. It's just that people need to respect it and not get into the midst of it. If they want to become independent, they shouldn't have the rest of the government say that if you have studied in Catalonia, your university degree is not going to be accepted in Spain, which has been said, even if it was before the independence. If it's after the independence as well, there's so many people that are threatened that they won't be able to get from one country to the other, that there would be no access for one to go into the other state, which is again is really frightening for many people, because some people just move about throughout the peninsula, much like in any other state, in any other country. It's sad to see this. It is really, really sad to see how basically they're trying to make this into a bilateral thing. Well, not bilateral. A thing with two sides. Just like two sides of the same coin. Just trying to hate one another and hurt one another for what has happened in the past and what's happening currently. I think that's ridiculous. I think they just need to get things sorted. If Catalonia wants to become independent, it's up to them. Spain has no say. And um, and if they want to remain there, that's also respectful. You know, that's something to be respected. We're not talking about putting a certain kind of government here. I'm speaking about the overall idea of becoming an independent nation. I completely respect that. I really do. I do not support or are against it because it's again not my say. It's not my say. I have been to Catalonia. Different aspects of my life are really reflective. In reflect Catalonian culture and identity and history. But you know, I'm not Catalan. I'm not gonna get into a position here. I'm just laying things as I see them. And then if you like this video or have a response to it, I would invite you to do it because I want people to say things about it. I want people not to keep silent and just let this go on. I do not want this to become a war. I do not want this to become a civil war. I actually think it can get into a war between independents and independentists and people unionists, if you will. So I would like to see your answers in the comments below. And sorry, this has been a long video and there's been a lot of repeating things in the end, but it's just it's a really controversial thing. It's gone on for a few years now, and I think I needed to give some public announcement of this. It's just I don't know. I respect Catalonia. I respect Spain. I respect whatever thing they do as long as they respect the other. So we'll see what the reaction is in the future, and hopefully it will not end in violent conflicts. It will not have to be like the independence of Ireland. It will not have to be a conflict. Hopefully. Hopefully it will not become a war.